folks, I'm Hector Garcia, CPA and business consultant. My channel generally is not around news, especially government spending news, but these videos and these updates seem to be very popular. People are talking about them. I'm getting good feedback in the comments that you're getting some value out of them. So I'm going to continue to do these updates as I see fit. So today, April the 23rd, the House passed an interim spending bill. This is technically all news from 2 days ago because the Senate had already approved the bill as it stood. This is AKA the fourth stimulus package. The House voted 388 votes to 5. So who says that we don't have a bipartisan Congress, right? Who says that we can't, Democrats and Republicans can't agree anymore? So we're just waiting for the president's signature. We have no reason to believe that the president won't sign it because, the president and the Treasury Secretary have been saying how successful this program has been. So this is obviously a big political win for the president and the Secretary of Treasury, but not just them, the Democrats too. As a matter of fact, any government official that's up for re-election in November is going to benefit from voting for this because people are hurting. People need money. The economy is being hurt, and the stimulus bill is supposed to help small businesses. It's focused around small business. So this is an amendment to the original CARES Act, laser focused on small business and a little bit of funding for the hospitals and for COVID-19 testing. We'll cover that in a second. This is a $484 billion bill. This is on the same week where they have reported 26 million Americans that have filed for unemployment since the COVID-19 crisis and the lockdowns as of the same time that they passed this bill. So obviously, there's a direct correlation between high unemployment and high level of urgency to pass this bill, which is around curtailing the unemployment numbers. Now, some states and local governments are already signaling wanting to end the mandatory quarantines and the lockdowns. So this will most likely be the last stimulus package that specifically aims to commerce, right? Maybe there might be some other stimulus packages to have people get off unemployment and replace their income. But in terms of something that gets funneled through the businesses or through small businesses, this might be the last one. But anyway, all this stuff is unprecedented. So me trying to predict something, it's a moot exercise anyway. So what's in the bill specifically? So there's $250 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. The original Paycheck Protection Program had $350 billion. So there's going to be another $250 billion. But they've also tacked in, and this is one of the reasons why the Democrats delayed the bill in the Senate a couple of days ago, is because they wanted to add in 3 extra things. They wanted to add special allocation for underprivileged businesses. And this is the best thing that they came up with. What they've done is, in order not to muck the system with, trying to force certain loans to certain groups of people, what they've done is they've taken $60 billion and allocated only to small lenders. Now, they don't specify if the small lenders also include the financial technology companies. They just say banks under $10 billion in assets, which for the most part, they're going to be local or regional banks. So the purpose of allocating specific money to those smaller banks is because the smaller banks are most likely to help businesses that don't have bank accounts with banks that are not participating with SBA program, or maybe self-employed people that for whatever reason the bank has mechanisms and doors and windows to not allow you to apply through them because you have to have had a business checking account or have to have had a previous lending relationship. So allocating those funds, it's in an attempt to possibly help businesses that were otherwise sort of left out by the original program. So you got the 250 and the 60 together. That's 310 billion for all Paycheck Protection Program, but you got that small allocation for small banks. So I think it's an interesting concept. We will obviously have to see how it pans out and if it actually does help some of the smaller people. We'll want to play some clips about what's going on with the public companies that have been getting PPP money because there's been a lot of bad publicity for them. In the same bill, we got $75 billion allocated to hospitals dealing with COVID-19 patients. I think the bill somewhere, I couldn't really understand it because it seems like legalese. It also allowed some hospital systems to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program if they were hurting financially, so they can also pay their staff. There's also $25 billion allocated to COVID-19 testing. Not 100% sure if that's for actual tests or that's for the logistics around deploying tests, which may include working with hospitals or drive-through locations or all this stuff that they've touted in terms of ideas and how to get testing out there. So once you put money into testing, they're probably going to execute the testing. And the purpose of the testing is to make it easier to reopen the country back up, to make it easy to end the quarantines, because most of the arguments against ending the lockdown is, hey, we need to have enough tests so we can know who has it and who doesn't, so we can make better decisions as citizens with an open country around how we want to manage that. So this is a clear signal that they're going to be spending money on helping small businesses that weren't helped on the first round, and also helping the hospitals and getting the testing done so we can open the economy back up. Now, the Democrats pushed for additional funding for state and local governments. Apparently, they're hurting financially. Not sure what the mechanics of that is. I assume that because people are not spending, there's a lot sales tax, and they're collecting less sales tax. I assume there's all sorts of other types of local taxes that state and local governments used to collect, and the lockdowns don't allow for that anymore, right? Maybe highway tolls, things like that. So I really don't know exactly what makes the state and local governments broke at this point, but they're pushing for more funding, and this bill does not include that. So that means that there will be probably a fifth stimulus package that focuses around state and local government funding, whatever that means. I'll keep you abreast if I think it matters to the average small business owner or accountant. Now, fintechs have been in the news because there are non-banks that have been approved to do SBA loans, but most fintechs were approved between the week of April 10th to April 16th. And by the time the fintechs really got the opportunity to get up and running and help people with these PPP loans, it was too late. But let me mention a couple of them. We have PayPal, QuickBooks Payroll, Veeam, Square, Bluevine, Ready Capital, Fountainhead Capital, and Cross River Bank. There's more, but these are the alternative to banks, non-bank lenders, financial technology companies that are actively accepting PPP loans. Some of them might not necessarily today, but the minute this gets signed into law, they probably will. And we might see a couple of more that I'm not listing here. This is not the definite list or the only list. The other ones that are worth mentioning are the loan brokers. I actually don't know if that's the right word to use, but these are not direct lenders. They're actually not funding the PPP. They're partnering with other banks. So Kabbage and Divvy, which I've heard tons of success stories about them having funding some loans, they're working directly and only with Cross River Bank, from what I can understand. And then there's Lendio, Fundera, OnDeck, Funding Circle, and Biz to Credit, which also you can apply through them, and they go find the bank, they go fetch the bank, and they get paid a commission or whatever, I assume so, for finding you the loan. So obviously they're going to be, you're more likely to have a human being sort of actively looking to get that loan approved, where with Kabbage and Divvy, it's specifically going to Cross River Bank. And in the previous slide, I listed Cross River Bank because you can actually go to the Cross River Bank website and go directly with them. I know this becomes confusing, but long story short, some of you may be with the big banks, completely lost faith on the big banks helping you with the PPP program. So here's an opportunity to try a non-bank, something you can go online. You don't even have to deal with a local branch. However, I'm not mentioning it here because I've mentioned it in a lot of videos. The small banks, the regional banks, the local banks, they were the heroes of the story during the first round of funding. So I would not discount those. And remember, those have $60 billion of funding allocated just for them, right? So you got about 15 to 20% of the funds focused around the smaller banks, which technically are going to focus on the smaller loans, but not really, because I've heard stories of the really small banks lending to really big companies. So there's no direct correlation with how big the bank is versus the average loan size. But let me go into a couple of websites here just to kind of show you. Look, here's PayPal, right? PayPal is actively taking PPP loan applications. Here's Kabbage, which is actively taking PPP loan applications. Here is QuickBooks Online, which is actively taking PPP loan applications if you use their payroll products. So that's kind of important. I do see that QuickBooks Self-Employed has an ability to do that. I haven't tested it yet, but the minute I see that application, I promise you I'll make you a video because I'm really excited about self-employed people being able to apply with the PPP via the QuickBooks Self-Employed. So I'm not certain exactly if that was up and running yet, but there seems to be a link for that. And I promise you, the minute I see it, I'll post a video about it. QuickBooks Online is really, really cool. It already pre-calculates all the payroll costs for you. So if you use QuickBooks Online with built-in payroll and you've had payroll for 2019, you really, from what I see, you really don't have to do much, right? I haven't done the actual application. That will probably be live next week when the additional funds get signed into law. But with QuickBooks Online, they have all your information. So I assume that right now, if you use QuickBooks Payroll, QuickBooks Online is probably going to be the very best and fastest way for you to get this loan application process. So I'm particularly excited about QuickBooks for other obvious reasons, but I find this to be really cool. Then we got Divi, who's got a website ready for taking PPP applications. We got Cross River Bank, who's ready to take applications. We got Veeam.com, who's ready to take applications. Blue Vine, ready to take applications. Fountainhead Capital, also ready to take applications. And we got Square, ready to take applications. And why do I do this? It's because I've heard. Now, why do I go through these? Is because I've heard in some of the comments in YouTube and emails where they said, hey, I heard the new bill excludes fintechs, right? I heard the new bill is not going to allow fintechs to lend. And I was thinking, where do people get this information? And I did some searching. And look, Fortune magazine has an article that says, new PPP small business loan bill excludes fintech lenders, threatening the smallest businesses. Okay? Now, if I were to read just the title, I would freak out and then make that assumption. But I think you should read the article, right? Now, as you go through the article, and the article to me is nonsense, by the way. Not nonsense, but it's just so dumb. It provides absolutely no value. But once you get all the way to the bottom, you will see what it says. The good news is that fintechs are ready to receive SBA approvals, blah, blah, blah. Bad news is new money may not even last a week. And the question is, are any fintechs will be able to lend? So what the article says in a nutshell is that they're not included in the bill in terms of mentioning or forcing people to use fintechs, but they're not really excluded from the bill. So Fortune magazine, this is technically almost fake news. Although if you read the article, you realize the article really kind of explains that, there isn't money allocated specifically for fintechs in the bill. That's what the article says. But if you read just the title, then you think that they're completely excluded. That's why I showed you every one of their websites that they have an active application, or for most of them should have an active application. Now, you know what's interesting too about this article? I actually had to pay $5 per month to be able to read the whole article. So I have an active Fortune magazine subscription, which, by the way, worst $5 I ever spent. I'm gonna log out to show you. I'm gonna log out. So I'm logged out of the article, right? So if you don't have an account with them and you go into this website, you will read the title, and then as you scroll down, look, it's a paywall. So you gotta actually pay to read the article to then realize that the title of the article was complete and utter bull. Okay, now, what else is happening with the PPP program? I'm going to play you this clip from Grant Cardone, the self-made millionaire, billionaire, internet YouTube sensation, right? That brags about how many millions and everything he's got in his YouTube channel. Yep, listen to this.
I've already been one of the lucky that got part of that $349 billion. I got my first 3 checks. I'm extremely fortunate to have had the resources and the intelligence and the people to file a bank that helped me. By the way, thank you so much, City National, for helping me out with that. You guys performed unbelievably. Big shout out to Juan and Jorge Gonzalez that made that go right and made that work. To all my staff that's with me that's had to put up the pay cuts. Not only am I trying to bring people back, I want to get all
right, okay, Grant. Okay. So he's a big shot real estate investor that makes millions and blah, blah, blah. And also goes for the PPP loan. So I don't want to criticize the guy, but I think you can read between the lines in terms of what I think about people like this. But anyway, so you hear all sorts of companies that you might not be expecting to be the small business target get funding for this. Now, there's an article in CNBC that came out today that says Ruth Chris, steakhouse owner, says he will repay the $20 million back. So I'm sure the the backlash for publicity here, for PR, was horrible. This is one of the news that was all over the place, which is Ruth Chris, the big restaurant, high-end restaurants that have millions of dollars in the bank, they get $20 million for the PPP. Now, while they might not have been doing something illegal per se, because the bill itself didn't restrict the type of companies that can get this, and the bill was done so quick and it was rushed so fast, and the banks were given no guidelines. And I don't even know why the banks were involved in the first place. I mean, if we're getting this money from the government and the government has our payroll information, why in the world are we doing it through the banks? I mean, that's just something, it just blows my mind. Now, I assume it's because, banks, know the people, and they can underwrite because they have the tools, or maybe the government doesn't. Well, that proved to be total BS. But anyway, I'm going to show you another clip here as worth listening to.
Crisis. The first time around, some companies in much better financial positions were some of the first to get these loans. One restaurant chain recognized this, Shake Shack, announcing it will return the entire $10 million loan it received. Founder Danny Meyer writing that the company is returning the money so that restaurants that need it most can get it now.
Bravo, Shake Shack. And the first company that reneged on the whole PPP thing was Shake Shack, or at least the first one that came out in the news. The first story about a company giving back the PPP money came from Shake Shack. And maybe the CEO and the management, maybe they're good people and that's why they did it, or maybe the PR was just so bad. Remember, the people that buy from Shake Shack usually are the younger, more activist crowd, and if they get a hold of this big evil company getting PPP money that's for the small businesses, well, you might get a boycott, you might get a little bit of backslash. So they said, you know what, these $10 million that we're giving back are probably the best money that we'll spend, because otherwise this could cost us millions in customer loyalty. Although I think most the average American customer, including myself, we have amnesia for these things, and if we like the burgers and the fries or whatever, we probably will continue to eat there. But I think bravo Shake Shack for being the first one of the pioneer. And look, Ruth Chris is already saying that they're also gonna give the money back. So I find that to be pretty interesting. Now, if you go into the Treasury website and decide to be a super nerdy person like me and try to read every document that's here so we can know exactly what's going on and try to help our clients navigate this craziness, you can go to the frequently asked questions, click on that, and then you can scroll all the way down. There's been an update on April 23rd. So I can scroll all the way down to the last page, and they added one new frequently asked question to this document, and I find this one to be quite interesting. Check this one out. Do businesses owned by large companies with adequate liquidity to support businesses' ongoing operations qualify for PPP? So before reading the answer, let me make a pause here. The only requirement that companies had in order to apply for a PPP was whether or not there was uncertainty about their economic future. That's it. There was no indication, no trends, no reports, no reduction in sales. There was absolutely no requirement for you to prove that you're being hurt by the lockdowns and the coronavirus crisis. Now, granted, when this bill came out and when it was written somewhere in the middle of March, you still didn't really know how long this was going to go for. Now, obviously, in hindsight, a month later, you know that there's uncertainty about the future across the board on every type of business you can think of. But back then, they wanted to make it loose enough just in case. And these are the unintended circumstances or consequences, that you have really big businesses that have cash, that have money, apply for this loan anyway. Or you have big shot Grant Cardone, our hero millionaire, applying for PPP. Anyway, so let's go to this answer. In addition to reviewing applicable affiliation rules to determine eligibility, so this is whenever you have a company where each location has less than 500 employees. So Ruth Chris had 5,000 employees, and they circumvented the small business thing because each location fell into the affiliation rules, and each location had less than 500. So that was the loophole that they used. And again, not a illegal loophole. It just was written into the law. So all borrowers must assess their economic need for a PPP loan under the standard established by the CARE Act. Okay, that's what we talked about just now. And the PPP regulations at the time of the loan application. So anyone that has applied already falls into that old standard. However, although the CARES Act suspends the ordinary requirement that borrowers must be able to obtain credit elsewhere, so you are not required to try to obtain credit elsewhere, because this is common SBA language. So the way the SBA works, this is before PPP. This is SBA for as long as I known it. I used to be a banker. The way SBA works is you're supposed to go through a regular bank through regular means of capitalization. You're supposed to go to your investors. You're supposed to go to the market. You're supposed to go to a regular traditional loan first. And if you can't go to any of those, then you go with the SBA. Like the SBA is supposed to be the last resort, sort of the safety net for lending. So they temporarily suspended it for the CARES Act and for the PPP, specifically because these were unprecedented circumstances, right? So that's what they're saying. Although the CARES Act is temporarily disabling this, or temporarily lifting this restriction, right? Look at this. Borrowers must certify in good faith that their PPP loan request is necessary, specifically before submitting a PPP application. So this is new. All borrowers should review carefully the required certification. Current economic uncertainty makes this loan necessary to support ongoing operations by the applicant. So now we're falling into a gray area where they're saying they're actually going to enforce this, or they're actually going to look at this a little bit harder. I don't know what this is going to look like on the execution, but this already came out in the FAQ. That means this is legislation. This is law-ish, right? But this is guidance, right? Borrowers must make this certification in good faith, take into account their activities, their current business activities, and their ability to access other funds of liquidity sufficient to support their ongoing operations in a manner that is not significantly detrimental to the business. For example, this is the key. This is why they wrote this, because all the backlash, the backlash of Shake Shack and Ruth Chris and all these public companies that have gotten the funding, and I'm naming those two because you know the names. But there's a bunch of random companies that, well, they're not random because they got a lot of employees and they're public companies and they make a lot of money. But I'm saying companies that do, I don't know, tubing, I don't know. There's specific industries that do things that you and I are not familiar with. These companies are getting funding, and these are companies worth $100 million and up. And here it is. There was an article about the largest public companies that took the PPP loan. And I'm going to put all the links to all these articles and all these websites in the description. And check it out. DMC Global, I never heard of them, but they're worth $400 million. Wave Life Sciences, again, never heard of them, $286 million. Mankind, LifeBland, I don't know where any of these companies are. Fiesta Restaurant, they probably own, I don't know, Chili's or Pollo Tropical or something like that. Taco Cabana, never heard of them. And Pollo Tropical, which is actually pretty big here in South Florida. It's like a McDonald's for Latinos. So you got all these like sort of larger companies that, granted, they have employees, right? And they're also hurting, and they've been shut down. And look, if they're using the money to pay employees, they're staying within the spirit conceptually of what the CARES Act was all about, what the PPP was all about. The problem was, and I said this in a different video, the problem is that they never defined what small business meant, or they never made an effort to define it. So now we're back to reading frequently asked questions in the Treasury website every couple of days to get the source of information of how these loans work. So based on that, look at this last sentence here. For example, it is unlikely that a public company with substantial market value, this is market cap, and access to capital markets will be able to make the required certification in good faith. And such companies should be prepared to demonstrate to the SBA upon request basis of that certification. So what they're saying is, now prove to us that you actually needed the money. Prove to us that you had true economic uncertainty, or the money was used to support your current operations. And this last sentence is a killer. It's a super interesting one. Lenders may rely on borrower certification regarding the necessity of the loan request. Any borrower that applied for a PPP loan prior to the issuance of this guidance. So any borrower that applied to this loan prior to the issuance of this guidance repays the loan in full by May 7 will be deemed by the SBA that they've made the required certification in good faith. What does that mean? That means that all these big companies that had the cash, had the market cap, had access to money, if they want to voluntarily not fall into the circumstance where they can get sanctioned or whatever, I really don't know how that works, by the SBA for making that certification in good faith, but it turns out that they did have access to funds or access to capital, or they did have money or whatever, they can actually pay the loan back by May 7th, and then they're good. That's what I understand from this. So you got Ruth Chris saying that they will pay the money back, or they return the money back. And maybe not so much a PR or good faith. It's by regulation. I'm pretty sure Menunchin or somebody from the Treasury called them and said, hey, dude, give the money back. So what does that mean? That means that probably on top of the money, the 250 billion and the 60 billion that we talked about just now, there's 10 million, 20 million. Like, some of this money may come back to this program. So that's excellent news if you're a small business that was left out from the first round of funding, which I mentioned was about 5% of businesses. So that's excellent news. And if you haven't applied yet and you're in line, or you've already applied and you're sort of in line, that's great news for you. So maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe this bill actually funds 20, 30, 40, 50% of small businesses as it was intended to. So I'm super excited about that, for sure. All right, so last note. If you haven't applied yet, apply, of course. Use a fintech, use a small bank. I don't have faith in the big banks anymore. If you already have an application with one of the big banks, I would probably keep it. I don't see any reason why withdraw it, but then have at least a second one in, right? Local bank or a fintech, have a second one in as a backup. As far as I know, and again, you should get your own advice from your own CPA and lawyer. You can't hold me accountable to this. But as far as I know, you can apply in multiple places. You just can't get funded by multiple places, right? So if you get funded by one place, the second loan will just bounce. Now, I think it would be good courtesy that if you do get approved and funded by one area, that you contact the other lender and say, hey, I got funded. I don't need this anymore. That way it at least opens up the queue line for the other people that are in line waiting to get that money. So I don't want to encourage people to have 10 applications out there, because it does take away from everybody else, or at least adds to the anxiety, because it's a longer wait time and it takes longer to get a response. But I think you should have at least 2, possibly 3 going, just in case, based on the results of round 1 of the funding. And if you want to learn from me directly how I put together the PPP loan applications, I'm running a webinar on Friday the 24th. That's like today or tomorrow, depending on when you're watching this, at 2 p.m. So Friday the 24th, 2 p.m. Eastern. It's a flat $100. I'm putting the link down there. I'm gonna limit the attendees to about 100. Maybe we'll go a little bit over. We already have like 60 or 70 people in there. If you can't attend the live, the recording will be available. Yes, we're making good money on that, but hey, that's effort pays off, right? That's the point of making videos and not sleeping and working really hard to inform people. It's so you can finally monetize your work. So I have hundreds and hundreds of people emailing me, asking me very specific individual questions about how to put this with the PPP program. And I just don't have the bandwidth to help each person. But if you value my answer and value the potential information I can give you, then this is an option, right? You can join the webinar. It's 2 hours long. If you love it, great. If at the end of the webinar, it turns out that everything in the webinar you knew already, that you learned absolutely nothing new, then like all the products that I sell, all the webinars that I sell, all the video courses I sell, you literally email me right after and say, it didn't work for me, no questions asked, you get your money back. So I do charge, I think, high cost for the things that I sell, my webinars and my training, but I think you get high value, and then you get that guarantee that if you don't like it, hey, I refund it. I do it all the time, and I do it proudly. So anyway, if you can read the Treasury website, you go through all these documents, if you can talk to your bank, if you can Google stuff, if you can watch all the videos, you could probably do this on your own. You don't have to attend a webinar to do this. I don't want to make it look or sound that you have to attend a webinar in order to know how to do this. But if you want to hear from me, my process, how I do it, and then have a Q&A section where I can maybe answer some very specific questions that I don't answer, and you find that valuable, then that's when you decide to join me with the webinar. Anyway, if you're a small business or an employee of a small business, I really, really hope that help comes your way, and hope that these PPP times are just short. I hope that May and June is the last months that we have to deal with. And I really hope that by summertime, we're back to normal. I really hope that. And I can go back to talking about taxes like a normal accountant, and I have to talk about PPP 24/7. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.